Like a lot of us, I track all of the statistics of my reading. Hey guys, it's Abby, and today we're going to be looking at my mid-year statistics wrap-up. All of the stats that I've accumulated over the past 6 months. So I'm going to be using a mix of 2 different graph styles. One of them is from Sophie from Portland the Pages spreadsheet that she makes each year, and the other one is G from Book Roast's Core Pile spreadsheet. I'm going to be using them interminglingly depending on what works better for the circumstance, and also just some of the graphs aren't on the other spreadsheet, so yeah. First up, books read per month. As you can see, for me it's down here, but as you can see, I've had some spikes and then it's just been kind of I think on average it's around 10 approximately if you average it out each month, which isn't bad. It's not bad. February and May were really good months. February was a lot of short books, I know, but May, I don't know how I managed that. Then moving to the pages read per month, that is interesting compared to January. So January I read 9 books, but it is the least amount of pages read because a lot of those books were short kids books that I got from NetGalley. So that was teeny tiny. And then yeah, even though February I technically read more books, but May I read more pages, which is my intent this year. I'm intending to track the pages that I'm reading. This is the amount of pages I've read so far this year. It's around 17,000, I don't know as of filming, but I'll know as of editing. So it's a large amount of pages, but also there are a lot of people like Connor Stompanto that have read more pages than me, so I need to get my ass in gear. Then for the very complicated one, which is all of the genres that I read. So this has got a lot of different things. I'm thinking specifically mystery and thriller. Some people would put those together, but to me they are different things. Mystery is like Poirot, Marple, Sherlock sort of thing, and thriller is like A Stranger in the House, you know, like Paul Hawkins, Gillian Flynn, those sorts of things. So to me they're different. I read a lot more non-fiction than I expected. I thought that number was going to be so much lower, but as per the majority of the books that I read were fantasy. I'm happy with that. The one thing that I am slightly displeased with is the number of science fiction. It's only at 5. I expected it because I don't have many sci-fi books on my shelves, but it would have been nice to have that higher. And then another one that I'm really happy with is classics. I know that 4 of those 7 are teeny tiny books, so yeah, sure, maybe they don't count, but I've still read 3 classics this year, so I'm pretty happy with that. Then looking at how the age ranges of the books break down. So I mainly read adult, 50%, half. I'm pretty happy with that. I have a lot of YA books still on my shelves that I want to get to, that I bought many moons ago and actually just need to get around to reading. So I am still making my way through them, so there is still a decent number of them on my shelves, but I still, every year, find it interesting that I lean towards adult books. Then in terms of whether the books are series or standalone, I have actually read just about more standalone books so far this year. I think the series market is bumped up by my rereads of Skullduggery Pleasant, but of course they do still count. Again, this is another one where I think I'm reading more series, and then I end up actually having read more standalones. I don't know. I don't know, but we run with it. Then one that I am decently pleased with, but I have some qualms, and that is how I got the books. So as you can see, there's 6 there that are owned. Those are the rereads, that's Skullduggery Pleasant. Then the 7 books that are gifted, so from my wonderful friends who've sent me books. There's 6 books that I've bought, which is higher than I thought. I can think of 5. What is the 6th? I bought A Wish After Midnight, I bought the 2 Bone Season books, and I've bought 2 Skullduggery books. What the hell is the 6th? Ooh, The Other Batgirl. Hey, that's the bought books. NetGalley, 10 books, which is a lot more than I expected, but I think 6 of them were knocked off at the beginning of the year, so I'm still surprised I read 4 NetGalley books, like apart from those, but okay. And then lastly, the biggest chunk, thank God, is the TBR chunk. So that is at 32 books. So I'm mainly reading from my TBR. I discussed this in my goals video. This needs to be higher. It's great that it's 50%, just over. It's great that it is just over 50%, but I need that to be higher. I need to be making more progress than I am doing. to get through my shelves. I have a ridiculous number of books, and I can now see gaps in my shelves, which is like a massive relief. But yeah, I need to get a move on. Reading method. So I read, unsurprisingly, primarily physical books. Those 15 ebooks there, the majority of them are the NetGalley books that I read, 10 of those. No, I read 2 novellas that only come in ebook form, and those were from the Bone season. I read A Wish After Midnight, and I read The Other Black Girl. That doesn't add up to 15. I don't know what one I'm missing, but eh. The one audiobook was Forest 404 by Timothy X Attack, which I adored so much. It's technically a podcast, but it was on NetGalley in the audiobook subscription, so I don't know. But I really enjoyed it. And then yeah, 46 physical books, which, because I'm trying to get through my TBR, I'm happy with, because if I start reading too much electronically, then my TBR is going to suffer. Rereads. So there's been 7 rereads and 55 that I've read for the first time, which I'm happy with. The only rereads I'm doing are Skullduggery. I'm happy with that. I'm happy that I am still rereading, and I'm also happy that it's kind of niched down into one specific area that I have a lock on. Then the star rating. So I was not expecting this to be how it is, but it makes sense. So two-star books. At least one of them was a thriller. One of them is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. The other one was Frictions by, is it August Strindberg? I think, one of the mini classics that I read. I wasn't expecting there to be so many 3 stars. I thought that I had read more highly rated books, but when I actually think about it, it does make sense. And I've read 15 5-star books, and I actually have a blog post on all 15 of those 5-star books if you want to go check that out. Then we have the year that the books were published. So G from Book Roast does also have a graph for this, but it's a pie chart, and I am just less keen on how it's laid out. It doesn't seem as simple to me, versus Sophie's Manor, which is a bar graph, and that's nice and easy because you can see it very clearly. So I have read 12 books from 2021. As you can see, I have still read about 20 books from 2000 to 2015, so I am still reading the older, modern books. There's a few from the 90s that I wasn't expecting, and I cannot remember what they were. 1 book from the 40s, which will have been one of the mini classics, and then 6 books from prior to the 1920s, and those are going to be the classics that I've read. I am decently happy with that. I am still reading some backlog. I've read some classics, and I've read modern books. I'm happy with that. Then looking at the page length, again, G does have a graph for this, but again, it's a pie chart, and I just think it looks better in a bar graph. So I'm using Sophie's, and I am reading as expected. And then most of the books are between 300 and 400 pages, which is a standard length novel, so most of the books I'm reading are there. Once you start hitting 400, that's when it's like debatable of like, is it a big book? 500, to me at least, yes, but 400 is debatable. I have then read 15 bigger books this year. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I want to keep doing it, I want to keep reading bigger books, but I'm not mad at that. Now moving on to the authors themselves, we have the genders of the authors. So I read mainly female authors. No surprise there, I have done for many years now. I have read more male authors than I expected. I think part of that is the Skullduggery, because that series is written by a man. And then I've read 2 books by non-binary authors. I know exactly which ones they were. That is a book by Akwaeke Emezi and a book by Rivers Solomon, 2 authors that I adore. I read 2 books from them last year as well, and I want to read everything they've ever published. Honestly, I need to read more non-binary authors because the 2 that I've read so far have become favourites, so I need to read more. I know that's not how it works, but if it means I'm reading more non-binary authors, are you really going to fight me? No. Then as to the race of the authors, whether they are an author of colour or not, the majority of my reading is still white. We know this, we've discussed this. Again, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that because my TBR shelves are primarily built up from books that I got secondhand or really cheap from British charity shops and bookshops, a lot of our books are white, especially in the charity shops. Basically, I'm working my way through my TBR shelves so that I can get most of the books that are by white authors off of them and start bringing in books by authors of colour. I am building up the kind of authors of colour collection on my TBR, and I'm hoping to get it to like minimum 50-50. So this isn't great, but I also was expecting it. Like, it's a bad stat, but I knew it was going to happen. Also, my voice is so bad. This call centre, guys, is killing me. Then if we break down the authors of colour, I am reading primarily black authors with a couple of Asian authors popped in there. That is going to be changing in the second half of 2020. 2020? No, 2021. The reason that's going to be changing is because I already have some Asian authors lined up, as well as needing to read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, who is indigenous to the North Americas. So that is in there. I would like to be reading more Asian authors, but I have been putting the focus in the first half of 2020 on reading black authors, so one step at a time. I'll get there. Then for the nationality of the authors, so I decided this year that I was going to break down UK into its constituent parts. Maybe that was a bad idea because now it looks like I read more Americans than I do British authors, but if you actually put together the Scottish and the English, well, fuck. No, I read more Americans. Excuse me.
Shame!
Okay, that's bad, that's bad. I always want to read more British authors than American authors, because I'm British. I'm kind of mad at that. If I include Irish authors and just make it the British Isles, then it's more than the Americans, please. Yes! I think part of that is because I'm going through my backlist, so it's a lot of booktube darlings for like YA fantasies that are primarily by American authors, because it is rare for a British author to be that beloved on booktube. So I am getting my way through those, so that is probably what's boosting up the American count there. I'm aware I have one that says Japanese American. That is from the very beginning of the year, where I hadn't realised what I was doing with this. 4 Swedish books, we know what those are from, those are the mini classics. And 2 South African books, which is nice, I'm glad to add that in there. 3 Scottish books is more than I expected, but I'm very happy with that. I am half Scottish. I know I sound fully English, I'm aware, but my mum is Scottish and the family that we speak to and spend time with is all Scottish, so although I sound like this culturally, I am southwest Scottish. And it's hilarious because all the other Scottish people who aren't related to me assume that I won't be able to understand them when they go into a broad Scots accent. It's highly amusing. Then the continent that the author's from, of course you can kind of extrapolate that from the last one, but it's nice to be able to see it. It is primarily European authors. So that is higher than the North American. I know for a fact that this year I haven't read any Canadian authors so far. So North America is just the United States of America. So I'm happy that I've read more European authors than American authors. Again, just because I'm in Europe. I am European. So I would rather be reading more from my own culture than from the American culture. So I'm happy that that is higher. And then I do have a few from Africa and one from Oceania, and that is Alice A.B. Endicott's book. I know that. And then of course Africa. I've read the 2 South African books and 1 book from a Nigerian author. Then for the books, whether they were own voices or not, this is not as bad as it looks. So the reason that the other is yes and not applicable rather than no is that sometimes it isn't applicable to say if it's own voices. For example, Derek Landy writing School of Your Pleasant. He's writing about magic, so obviously that isn't own voices, but he's writing about Irish people in Ireland as an Irish man. But I wouldn't count that as own voices. Like, technically it is, if you break it down like that, but it isn't like actually something that I want to mark as own voices. So that's where that discrepancy comes in. So I'm not mad with this stat. Then we look at the mess that is my LGBTQ+ rep chart. So the reason I said mess is, if you look at the top one there, absent, that's just me not having fully typed in absent. So 1, it's a mess because I screwed it up, but 2, it's a mess because I am reading primarily straight books, or books where they don't mention the sexuality of the character, and the default in our society is straight cis. That is something that I am, again, working on, so I would really love some more Ace and Demi books. There is a non-fiction I have my eye on, and it's also gorgeous. Then the breakdown of the LGBTQ+ books that I actually did read. Again, this graph is a mess because I have both bisexual and bi. And what this is basically it's just a free type box and they get put in as you type them. So that's why that's happened, but also that's why asexual lesbian is in one, because a book had both forms of representation in there. So I put them both in the box and then it marks it as its own separate category. So I need to figure out what I'm doing with that, whether I'm going to make the graph accurate, like put like asexual in one box and lesbian in the box of another book that doesn't actually have diversity, just so it goes on the graph. I'm not sure yet. But as you can see, primarily the representation in the books is bisexual. That is for a few reasons, but the main one being Skullduggery Pleasant. And then I've read 3 books with demisexuality present in the characters, which is my sexuality, and that is from the Bone Season series, which I love. Not because the main character is demi. And then last but not least, we're looking at the new books that I've brought in this year so far. I know that the top of this graph says purchased. That's not quite right, because I also tracked the books that I was gifted, so this is just the books that I've acquired over the past 6 months. I'm also not tracking, in terms of my spending on books, I'm not tracking how much I've spent on gifting other people books, so that's not included on here. As you can see, June is the highest. I didn't buy any of those books in June. They were all gifted to me by my uncle and by my partner. May, that one book is mine, that's Skullduggery Pleasant. I had 3 pre-orders this year, 2 Skullduggery Pleasant and 1 from the Bone Season. Then I've bought 3 novellas, and then the rest have been gifts, I think. So yeah, I didn't buy most of these. Thank you so much, guys. And then if we take a look at how the spending is broken down each month, so as you can see, it doesn't quite match up with the purchases graph. It doesn't line up at all. So the spending doesn't match the acquiring, which is funny to look at. And it also makes it look worse when I've just bought 1 book each of those months. It makes it look a lot worse than it is. But I don't have any other pre-orders left for... I don't think I do. No, I have one. I have 1 pre-order, but it might not be out till 22. So basically, that shouldn't change too much. But we'll see. We'll see. And those are my stats, my first half of 2021 stats for my reading. Let me know down below, guys, if you track your stats. If you do, what do you track? Do you track the same things as me? What are your goals for your tracking? Are you trying, like me, to read more diversely? Or do you have other plans, maybe getting through your TBR books? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you've reached this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Put the little stats emoji down below in the comments. If you don't know which one it is, I'll leave it in the description box. And if you enjoyed the video, please think about subscribing and liking, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!